Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, our popular financial literacy update is coming up, but first, the presidential candidates have descended on the state. The U.S. Senate election in our state, well, it gets a little testy. We'll get into that and more after these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Well, I'll tell you, if you're tired of politics, I think you want to move out of the state, because the candidates for the presidency are now pouring into the state one after another, meeting north, east, south, and west. The U.S. Senate election, the Democratic primary, I should say, is heating up. Joining me to talk about that and more is Steve Esack from the Allentown Morning Call and Marc Levy from the Associated Press. Well, let me start with you, Steve. We can't chase them out of the state, can we? The presidential candidates, they are really focused now. New York and Pennsylvania, the two big contests in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, right? they've been pouring in. They've been all over Philadelphia. They've been out there. They're all raising money. And they, who would have thought that this would happen for actually both parties? It seems like that it is coming down with Pennsylvania's late primary, that the voters here in this state actually will make a difference in the primary election for president. It rarely happens, if I'm not wrong.
No, you're absolutely right. For decades, we haven't mattered. All right, let's take a look at these contests. The Republican contest looks like it's a bit closer in the polls. The fact of the matter is that we've got a complicated situation for picking delegates. You've written about this. We've all been trying to understand this. First of all, do you expect a close election now? We've got Donald Trump, Cruz is nipping at his heels, Rubio is out, but we have, John Kasich, who's been campaigning pretty hard in the state. What's your assessment of where this stands at the moment?
Well, I mean, Terry, your poll is probably some of the best information we have on it, which is that John Kasich seems to be making up ground on Donald Trump in the Republican primary in Pennsylvania. Ted Cruz lags behind them. It may be that the supporters of some of the folks who have dropped out, Marco Rubio, Jeb Bush, more mainstream candidates, or viewed by the Republicans as mainstream candidates, are drifting towards Kasich. Yeah. He's got some background in Western Pennsylvania, having been a native there. And he's the governor of a neighboring state, so there may be more roots for him here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's a good point. The other thing is that has to match up against the momentum that Cruz has, right, coming out of Wisconsin. I mean, go ahead.
I was just going to say, too, is I think that Pennsylvania Republicans are a lot more mainstream than people might give them credit for. I mean, all you got to do is look at the backlash that our last governor had, Tom Corbett. People didn't think he was aloof or uncaring and that kind of thing. So I don't know if Ted Cruz or Donald Trump would have that same popularity in this state. So therefore, they will go toward that the Ohio governor and who does have those Western PA roots.
Yeah, I think it's also going to be a question. I mean, the delegate selection, I'm really almost hesitant to get into this. The Republicans elect 54 out of the congressional districts, and every person who goes to vote in the Republican primary gets to vote for 3, right? But
that's right.
But you can take it from there. Then is where the confusion begins, right?
Right, because none of those people are necessarily bound to vote for any particular candidate at the convention. And everyone believes at this point that we are going to have a contested convention for the Republicans.
So that means that when Republican voters go to vote, 54 of the 71 delegates, they're not bound, as Marc points out. And even though they've said they might support someone, there's no guarantee of it when they get to the convention, right?
No, that whole delegate thing confuses me to no end. I'll leave it up to Marc to talk about.
Yeah, you've written about it. I mean, and around this state, journalists like you have been interviewing them, trying to get a handle on it. And every place you turn, well, if the congressional district goes for Donald Trump, a delegate candidate will say, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. And some have been have said they're going to do, who knows?
Yeah, and I mean, Kasich had an event recently in Pennsylvania in Hershey. I interviewed people who were Trump supporters but showed up because they say, well, what if I like Kasich more? So people, I think, are getting educated on Ted Cruz. They're getting educated on John Kasich. Donald Trump's gotten a lot of media exposure because he's the front runner, and they know maybe what they need to know about him by now, and they're feeling out the other two guys in the race.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think politics is like sports. People hop on a bandwagon constantly. So if someone starts getting a bigger bandwagon, and people will jump to any candidate.
Would you agree, before we run to a break, I'm going to ask you this question. It looks like this could get very competitive, and given all of everything that we've seen the next couple of weeks, I mean, almost anything could happen. I mean, is that a crazy statement to make? There
are opportunities there to take Pennsylvania. The question is, how much does it really help a candidate? Can Bernie Sanders win Pennsylvania? And if he does, will it help him? And with all the uncommitted delegates, whoever wins on the Republican side.
Yeah. So the popular vote winner may not end up winning a majority of the delegates. That's the whole point, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's a little strange about it.
The whole process is bizarre. It's bizarre.
We're going to end this segment on the whole process is bizarre. All right, when we come back, we're going to pick up on the Democratic primary debate for the United States Senate. We'll see how that goes in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, now celebrating 100 years as the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association and Partners for Public Education, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Welcome back. I'm chatting with Steve Esack and Marc Levy. We're doing a little pre-primary, what do I want to say, a pre-primary set of interviews on the candidates who are coming into the state. We looked at the presidential election. We'll now take a look at the U.S. Senate election on the Democratic side, where there's a big fight. Katie McGinty, who worked for Tom Wolfe and for Clinton and Gore, and Joe Sestak, a former admiral who was a member of our congressional delegation on the Democratic side. John Fetterman, the mayor of Braddock, old steel town out in Allegheny County. I'll tell you, this race is heating up. They're now starting to criticize each other.
Yeah, we've hit the last 3 weeks of the campaign. They're engaging in a series of debates, and they're going after each other. We've heard during the campaign attacks on each other, but this is the first time they're making these attacks to each other's faces, and we're seeing a little daylight on the issues between themselves, as well as on their backgrounds.
But on the daylight, here's what's sort of fascinating, and I'll address this, Steve, you can jump in after that. Overall, there's some daylight, but on the big issues, they're not all that far apart. I mean, I was going through their positions and trying to figure out, how they differ in terms of what would matter with the voters. There doesn't seem to be a lot of difference there.
No, I don't think so. I think it really comes down to personalities.
I knew you were going to say that. Go ahead.
And that's what it is, because on paper, Joe Sestak is probably one of the best candidates for any party to come out. I'm talking his resume, his military resume, his educational resume, all that other stuff. But he's so disliked with the Democratic establishment that they went out and got Katie McGinty and John Fetterman. He's doing what he's entitled to do, and he's running on his own. But it all really comes down to personalities. And
it's interesting to pick up on what Steve said, how the establishment versus the anti-establishment. Look at the endorsements that Katie McGinty has gotten.
Yeah, and she's falling back on them heavily. She's endorsed by the president
and the vice president.
The vice president was with her in Pittsburgh for a brief period the other day. So to the extent that she can get that message out that, hey, I'm endorsed by the president, she's endorsed by the AFL-CIO, she's leaning on that heavily. Now, Joe Sestak also has been around the state a lot in the last 6 or 7 years. And when you...
I've joked and said, I think he's worn out 20 pair of sneakers, right?
Yeah. And when you talk to people in the smaller counties, the activists there, he's been there for them. He's been there for their fundraising dinners, for their regular events, and he's built up goodwill, and everyone knows it. And those are kind of the things in play here for these two candidates.
And just for the record, then, Fetterman has this unique personality. You want to? Can you at all describe it with the tattoo? Go ahead.
Well, no, I think his personality is. I mean, on paper, he's highly educated too, but he comes across as that steel worker for that town in which he's a mayor, and I think it's great, and it's very refreshing that in the last debate I watched, he was there with an open collar shirt, short sleeves, showing off those tattoos and that sort of thing. So it is refreshing to actually see that, and he is, by all definitions, the outsider in this race.
That's a great point.
He's also very plain spoken, which I think
connects in a sense with
we're seeing it with Donald Trump, right?
Yeah. But he's endorsed. Let's see. He's endorsed Bernie Sanders. Katie McGinty has endorsed, help me
Hillary Clinton.
Hillary Clinton. And Joe Sestak has endorsed no one, correct?
It's because no one will endorse Joe Sestak.
That's because no one will endorse Joe. Yeah. So in the end, this looks like another one of these elections where in the polls Sestak's had a lead, but McGinty is, you can't turn on a TV station, listen to any commercials and not see her commercials, right?
We are in the midst of millions of dollars of TV advertising for the candidates, both from their campaigns and third parties that are sending ads onto the airwaves.
So again, lots of money, Steve, lots of activity. It's one of the most significant primaries given the importance of this race. One of the most important Senate races in the country, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And as we were speaking off camera, that if so some of these Democrats might really give Senator Toomey, the Republican, a real challenge in November if there is a Democratic
sweep.
Wave.
We're not predicting that to use the subjunctive.
Oh, yeah.
All right, before I let you go, I do want to ask one other question. Governor, LGBT executive order, explain that for the folks.
Right, so the governor is signing executive orders that would ban discrimination based on gender identity, sexual preference for state contractors and state agencies. This is coming in the midst of an uproar over laws and bills being passed in North Carolina, Mississippi, Georgia. The state legislature here has not acted on legislation to that effect that the governor has asked for.
So that would not address private contractors, private employers, correct? Just people work for the state who have, deal with contracts with the state and state business itself. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct, and it has nothing to do with this bathroom issue, lack of a better word, that you hear come up in those southern states. It really is just,
and that's you
can't fire somebody, you can't discriminate against them based on their sexual orientation, and that sort of thing. It really has nothing to do with where someone can go to the bathroom.
All right, thanks for the update. Thanks for coming in. All right, coming up, Popular Financial Literacy Update. We'll get into some helpful hints for students, I think. We'll be back in a minute.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania, and by the Pennsylvania Coal Alliance, representing companies involved in America's most affordable, reliable energy source. To learn more, visit betterwithcoal.com.
Welcome back to the program. Well, we get into this about once a month, financial literacy. It's extremely important. We're going to keep on it for a while because learning how to save, grow your money, learning how to make wise decisions when it comes to financial investments and financial advocacy, and that's really what it is important. Joining me as often is the case is Patrick Conway. He's the CEO of the Lanco. No, I won't say that. He's the CEO of the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. And Stacey Hankey, she's the CEO of the Lanco Federal Credit Union. But you can go either one, right? You guys are,
we're all in this together.
That's exactly right. You're all in it together. All right, let's start with some basics. The pressing need to have young folks learn more about financial literacy early on. Take it from there. What's the condition now that you think of a lot of young folks when it comes to that?
Well, it's interesting, Terry. I have a 16-year-old son, and he's learning to drive, and I would never think of giving him the keys to my car without teaching him how to drive. And yet, that's really what a lot of us do with our young folks, when it comes to financial services and products. So we've got to teach young people at an early age, how to get your first credit card, how you're going to obtain your first mortgage, planning for retirement. Kids are coming out of school without the skill sets and the knowledge that they need to really succeed in life.
He's made a really great point. We don't think about it. We train people to do all these important things that are essential for their livelihood, but yet their financial and fiscal decisions are critical to their livelihood, right?
Yeah, so much so. We unfortunately see a lot of young people, when they are going into college or just coming out of college, have made a lot of really poor decisions that are going to haunt them for quite some time because they just didn't know any better.
Yeah, I'm looking here at some of the data you've provided. 71% of teens report learning about money management from parents. 35% say they've learned about the topic in school. 52% of teens say they want to learn more about money, including budgeting, saving, checking accounts, and investments. So it's not as though young folks say, well, don't bother me with it. They do want to learn, don't they?
Yeah.
They do.
I was just going to share at dinner last night, my son out of nowhere said, I think it's been a while since we've done that checkbook thing.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
oh, that's priceless.
And he's 15.
Yeah, he's priceless. Yeah, and yeah, we're taking time here, but to emphasize this, okay, parents can be very, very helpful, but so can the schools, right? Go ahead.
Absolutely.
The role of the schools.
Absolutely. Some school districts require some form of financial education and some don't. My son at Central Dauphin, they are required to take a course, but you've got to find the right instructor and people who are passionate about teaching that as well. And credit unions are in schools. We're in 230 out of the 500 school districts around the state, and we've got credit unions with in-school branches, 50 of those, and we're involved in reality fairs, which a simulation of real life circumstances.
I thought you were talking about
schools.
Politics, but you're talking about, I'll let you get by on that.
I was just going to add, reality fairs are very common in our area lately. Our credit union has actually done 3 so far this school year, and the kids get really excited. So basically, they get a salary, a pretend salary, and they go through and make budget decisions based on that salary.
Oh, wow.
And it's actually really cool and exciting to see that these kids are really engaged.
I love that reality. I love that reality. So the reality is they get the money and they have to do the planning for it.
Yeah.
This isn't playtime. This is you get the money and you got to.
And they often make mistakes, which actually is a wonderful thing as part of the exercise, because they have to go back and reevaluate the decision and figure out where they went wrong and make a new choice. And it's just very valuable.
All right, we're going to run to a break. We come back. Why should schools do it? Now, as a former college professor. Well, I'm a professor. I'm not in a classroom right now day to day, but do we want to add something else to the curriculum? You're going to have to, you can defend that, I'm sure. All right, we'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, advancing quality, improving lives. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Business Council and by the Pennsylvania Business Council Education Foundation.
Welcome back. We're talking financial literacy update with Stacey Hankey from the Lanco Federal Credit Union and Patrick Conway from the PA Credit Union Association. All right, you wanted to make a point, I think, that's very important. This is not a 40-hour-a-week deal here for this. Go ahead, talk about that.
I mean, certainly you can take as much time as you have to talk to your kids about financial education, but research shows that as little as 10 hours is going to make a long-term difference in their savings habits, their spending habits, and just overall help them. It doesn't need to take a ton of time.
Yeah, and also you can have fun with it. I mean, you can play games with it and have them, I mean, there's ways to do that. All right, you're in the schools. How important it is for the schools to, address this, even though, as you know, the curriculum's crowded. You get it.
Right, absolutely. We think it's an important component of any education, and we think that school districts should consider offering financial literacy or inviting, people in from outside to help with that, like credit union professionals that are in schools teaching kids and finding fun ways to do that, whether it's the reality fairs that we talked about or just coming in and sharing, knowledge with students. We think that that's very important for kids.
Yeah, you also, as you point out, there's other resources that you have and they're in the community that schools could work with as well, correct?
Of course. Junior Achievement, your local credit unions, NEFI, which is the National Endowment for Education Fund. There's lots of options out there that can help the teachers and help the schools to develop a program.
Yeah, and the other thing is you're beginning to have some success.
Yes. I mean, you look at the penetration that we have, being in 230 school districts, I think there's an increasing appreciation for the importance of financial literacy. We've seen in society that it's a critical issue, and I think schools are recognizing that. So we are having success. Yeah.
One of the debates, as I point out, is, let's be honest, schools face enormous pressure on the content and the subject matter and what to teach, and then they have the testing that they have to do to pass state tests and make sure that they're doing the right thing. But there's also some schools that have standalone courses in it. I think you say it's less than 10. Go ahead.
I'm going to defer to Pat on that. I don't know.
Go ahead.
Yeah, some school districts require some sort of programming. Others don't. But those that don't have really opened up their doors to people coming in from outside. From financial services to bring in that expertise. And no matter how we do it, we just think it's a growing problem in the country, and we want to be a part of the solution.
Absolutely.
All right. Yeah, final word. What's your credit union? What have you been doing specifically?
Oh, we do a lot. We actually have a gentleman by the name of Steve at our credit union that works weekly in the Twilight program at Penn Manor High School. The kids love him. I think it's every Wednesday he goes in to teach the Twilight program. We've been doing reality fairs, in-classroom presentations, not only our own reality fairs, but volunteering at others across the state. We're very, very dedicated to financial literacy.
All right, thanks for a great update. We'll see you next month.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
As always, thanks for watching Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and we'll see you soon.